Hi, I'm Mindy Wood from Purposefully Simple. So many people are interested in getting backyard chickens for fresh eggs, but a lot of times I think they're afraid that they're going to mess it up, so they don't get started. And so this video is going to teach you how to get started raising baby chicks naturally and keeping them healthy as naturally as possible. And it's really not that hard, so I know you can do it. A good place to start is to figure out how many laying hens that you actually need. A good rule of thumb is about one laying hen per person in your household who eats eggs. Some people eat less eggs than that and some more, but it's a good place to start. You also will want to consider what breed of hens you'd want. I prefer the dual purpose birds so that I know when my hen comes to the end of her laying life that she can continue to be food. Some people don't want to do that, and that's fine. The chicken breeds that I've had and enjoyed are black Australorps, Americanas, buff Orpingtons, and Rhode Island red chickens, and those have all been great, and they're all dual purpose. They do a great job in laying, and they're also meat birds in the end if that's what you prefer. So those are all great places to start. Where to get those chickens is going to depend on where you live. You can get chicks at your local farm store. You can usually order them through your farm store, or they might have a certain week where they get baby chicks in and you can just show up and pick out some chicks. Often there are minimum orders even for your farm store. Usually that's because the chicks will keep each other warm in the box on their way home. But you can call and ask, and I think one time the minimum order was 4, so that's pretty reasonable for someone who's just looking for backyard chickens. Another thing to think about is what time of year you want to buy them. Often, we're in New Hampshire, so around here they usually have chicks starting in March and into April, sometimes May, but usually March and April. The earlier you get them, obviously the sooner they'll start laying for you, but the later you get them, the less you have to worry about keeping them warm, and the more likely you are to be able to get them outside sooner. So that's just something to think about, what you think would be better for you. The brooder. Okay, the brooder is a place where where your baby chicks will live. It's a nice enclosed area that is the right temperature, and they have food and water and all that stuff. So a brooder can be, we've used cardboard boxes before. People will use baby swimming pools or kiddie pools. There are things that you can buy at farm supply stores. You could also build something out of wood, or there's so many ways that you could do it. The size would really depend on how many chicks you have. Some sources will say about a half square foot per chicken or per chick in your brooder. That's awfully tight, and if you're in that amount of space, your chicks might start just sort of getting on each other's nerves. So the more space, the better, really. 2 square feet would be good. But if you're ordering a lot of chicks, that's going to be hard to do inside. So you just have to try to give them as much space as possible, and then keep an eye on them to see if they're getting upset or if they're, doing okay. Another thing to keep in mind is the bedding. So they need some sort of bedding to absorb the poop, and that'll help neutralize the smell and be soft for them to walk on. I use pine shavings. Some people will use chopped up hay or some other soft material. You can't use cedar because that can be toxic. And you shouldn't use newspaper because it can get slippery and can cause chicks' feet to sort of splay out. So pine shavings are a great place to start, or chopped up hay or straw, something like that. You'll need in the first week you could put paper towels over your bedding. That's good for the really small chicks because it stops them from eating the bedding, which could be dangerous, and it also will keep it clean, and it's easy to kind of clean that up, and once they get a little bigger they can just be on the shavings. Okay, you'll need netting or some sort of screen material for the top of your brooder. They start jumping out pretty quickly, so we have a netting material that goes over. You could also, I've heard people using like old screens from windows. You just lay it over the top and it keeps everybody in, because they'll definitely jump out and try to fly away, and they want to explore everywhere. So you got to keep them in there. Ventilation. You want to make sure that the reason that we use netting or a screen is so that there is ventilation. We don't want to cover them up in a really tight space. We also want sunlight to get in there whenever possible, so lots of ventilation is great. As far as food and water go, you have some options. You can get medicated feed or unmedicated feed. You can get organic, non-organic. What I choose to do is, now we're getting an organic feed that is unmedicated. The reason we've chosen unmedicated is that I feel like because I have such a small flock and I'm able to be really attentive to them, I would be able to see any kind of signs of anything going on and then treat with antibiotics if needed, rather than doing it preventatively. That's totally up to you. I definitely did do medicated in my first flocks because I didn't really know and I wanted to be cautious. So that's just something, it's a personal choice and something you have to decide on. Also with water, so what I do is if I'm getting the chicks, on the day that I'm getting the chicks, I'll make this sort of Powerade kind of water for them. So I'll add raw apple cider vinegar, like a crushed up or chopped up clove of garlic, raw honey, and probiotics if I have them or if I feel like they need it. It's a good little like boost drink for chicks who've been traveling or are, even just the trip home from the farm store may make them a little droopy and need a little boost. So that's a natural way to boost their immune system, give them a little energy, and get them off on a good start. Probiotics and electrolytes are something else you can add. You can buy them on Amazon or at the farm store, farm supply store. You can add that to the water, and those help just sort of give them a good boost too. Grit is something that you'll need. Some people say that you don't need any grit for chicks if they're only eating the crumbles. And as far as the food goes, you're going to buy crumbles that are for chick starter and grower. Usually I've only seen starter and grower. I guess there are some that are just starter and just grower, but I've only ever seen them starter and grower. So I guess that's what I get for mine. So these are smaller little crumbles that the chicks eat, and some people say you don't need grit for them because the little crumbles are so fine and they sort of disintegrate. They don't really need the grit, but there's no harm in giving them grit. And then if you do decide to give them some treats or like grass from outside, then it's good for them to have grit. They really need it if they have those kinds of treats. Temperature. Okay, some people do a heat lamp. I've never done that, so I don't know a whole lot about it. I know that you put the heat lamp in and you want it to be about I think 95 degrees starting, and then you'd lower the temperature as you go through. What I do, and I'm really enjoying it, is that we have an Eco Glow, Brincia Eco Glow, which is like this little platform, and it provides radiant heat, just sort of like the mother hen would. And the chicks can climb under there and get warmed up, and then they can walk around when they are nice and warmed up. And it really replicates the mother hen's body pretty well. So I feel like it's a really natural way to give them that ability to regulate their own heat rather than keeping them at one temperature. If you use a heat lamp, you could still do that. You could just heat one side of the brooder and allow them to kind of move around. But another reason we chose the Eco Glow is that it's not going to start a fire. It's not likely to start a fire. Heat lamps definitely can, so we just wanted to be a little more cautious in that way. So that's what we've chosen. Setting up the brooder. A day or two before your chicks arrive in the mail or you go to pick them up, set up your brooder. You'll put your bedding in. I like to put about 6 to 8 inches of bedding in. That helps neutralize the smells, and you don't have to pull it all out and put new bedding in because there's so much in there, and they'll sort of turn it by scratching around, and you'll be pretty good until you get them outside. You might have to add a little bit here or there, but that'll be a good start. Fill the water with your Powerade kind of water. You can fill up the feeder and get that all ready, and so that when you do bring them home, they'll be ready to go in. Turn on either your heat lamp or your Eco Glow and make sure that it's already heated up for when you bring your chicks home, so they have a nice warm spot to get warmed up and kind of start feeling a little better. When they do arrive, it's a good idea to grab your little chicks. When you pull them out of the box and you put them in the brooder, just kind of tip their beak into the water to show them that's where the water is, and that's where they will go to get their water. And it's good to just keep an eye on them to make sure that they are all drinking and they do know where it is and they know where their food is. They're pretty gentle little creatures, so they need a little help sometimes. As soon as you get them home, just give them a little time to acclimate and to relax. But after they do seem to be relaxed and kind of happy where they are, then it's a good idea to handle them regularly, gently of course, and not too often, but regularly, so they get used to you, they get used to being held, and that way when you do put them outside, they'll be used to you touching them and trying to pick them up and stuff, and they'll be easier to catch if you need to. Okay, so what to look out for. There are a lot of different diseases and things that chicks could get. It's not really important for you to know all the different diseases and all the symptoms. You'll know if your chicks are acting weird, if they're not getting up to eat or drink, if their legs look pale, or they just look like they're very sleepy and everyone else is jumping around. If they just don't seem right, then that's a reason to look and see what might be going on. Look online, see what it is, and then you could treat with, you could try to treat with more natural remedies, or that might be a time when you need to do an antibiotic or something like that. You'll just trust it, that you will know that they're acting strangely, and then you can sort of explore that and don't be so worried. If you have a small flock and you do all the things that we've talked about right, like you put enough bedding in so they don't get damp, and you have enough heat for them, and the food and water, if you have all those things, they're not likely to get ill. So you shouldn't worry too much about it. Just be aware if you do start seeing kind of unusual symptoms. One thing that is fairly common with chicks is pasty butt, which is basically their poop just gets stuck over their vent, it can be very serious because if it's stuck there, they can't eliminate, and that could be dangerous for them. So that's something you definitely want to pay attention to. If that happens, what you can do is you can kind of put their vent into some warm water and kind of get that softened up and clean it off. And then you might want to keep them separate for a little bit just to keep an eye on them, make sure they're not going to get pasty butt again. Now that we've covered the basics of raising baby chicks, I will show you what our brooder looks like. So here is our brooder. This is a container we found in the barn. So I don't know how much it would cost to buy. I think it would be pretty expensive. So we didn't buy this, but I think you can buy them at like farm supply type places. we have over here, we have the waterer, which is already getting bedding in it, and the feeder. So when the bedding, when the water gets lots of bedding in it, we've just been scooping out the bedding and, you know, refilling the water with clean water. Some people will do something else where they put like a little bit of a screen underneath it so the bedding can't get in. There are a few different ways that you can do it so that the bedding doesn't get in, because it is kind of a pain. Over here on this side, we have the Eco Glow. So this is where they'll go, and they can get warm underneath, and they definitely like to roost on top, as you can see. So that's the one thing about the Eco Glow that I don't like, is that they jump on top and then they poop all over it, and it's kind of harder to neutralize the smell of that poop. So I'll put some shavings up there occasionally, kind of try to scrape the poop off. But other than that, I really like it because they can kind of just go in and out as they need to, and I don't have to worry so much about the temperature, and I don't have to have a thermometer or anything like that. So it makes it a lot easier. I think the Eco Glow it's good for as long as the air temperature in the room is above 50 degrees. It might be, I think it's 50. It might be 55 or something, but that's pretty reasonable. We've used it outside once it was warm enough at night that it was above that temperature. We've put it out with our pullets. So you can see that there's some grass in here too. I'll bring in some grass for them to scratch around and to eat. I also give them grit. There's that little plastic container there is, it was filled with grit. I'll take that out in a little bit, but they seem they're a little bit crowded. As you can see, a couple of them are sort of jumping on each other, and they're starting to get a little crowded. So we're definitely looking to get them out as soon as possible. As soon as it's warm enough outside at night, we'll probably put them out in the coop, because they do grow very, very, very fast. You can put them out as soon as they're fully feathered. They can go out without any supplemental heat. And that's another thing that I like about the Eco Glow, is that you can put it out with them, and if they don't need it, they just don't use it. It's not a big deal. It's different than using a heat lamp where you're already heating the space, so that might interfere with them starting to regulate their heat on their own. So usually around 4 weeks, you can put the chicks out, as long as it's warmish out. It's around 60 degrees at night, which here in New Hampshire, that's pretty much the summer. Before that, it's not that warm at night. And I think that's it. So that's an overview of how to get started with raising baby chicks and how to keep them healthy naturally. If this video was helpful to you, share it with a friend.